Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. You are now listening to The Right Side. I am your host, Jeff Doggett, coming to you on the greatest station in the nation, from the greatest location in the nation. Shout out to all of you. Shout out to all of you. There we go. Shout out to, I thought it was echoing. Hello. Just teasing, just teasing. Shout out to all of you listening to us all the way from Kennebunkport, Maine, and that's as far north and as far south as Key West, Florida, as far east as Long Island, New York, and as far west as Long Beach, California, and all the points in between. For those of you that are listening to us around the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever greeting best suits the time zone that you are in. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases such as COVID-19. Number one, wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with warm soap and water. Now, if you don't know how long 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday to yourself. And when you're done, that will be 20 seconds. Number two, cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. Yes, I know that's common sense, but how many of you are like me to know that the least common thing is common sense? Number three, stay away from people who are sick, and you stay at home when you are sick. Stop trying to be a hero or a heroine. That job or that event or whatever it is that you just feel you have to be there, it's going to go on whether you're there or not. You're not indispensable. Sorry to burst your bubble on that. Also, too, despite the ruling that was passed down this week by a federal circuit judge in Florida, when you are in a crowded area, a crowded enclosed area like a bus or a train or a plane or a movie theater or a store or a concert hall or an arena, whatever the case may be, please wear your mask. The COVID crisis is not over with. I know the numbers are going down, but it is not over with. So please wear your mask and continue to social distance when you can. Also, wipe down frequently touched objects and items, and you may want to mix in your car some hand sanitizer and keep it in your car so that when you go to the gas station and pump this overpriced gas, you will have something to sanitize your hands as you don't know who touched that pump prior to you touching it. And this was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise, powered by Google. If you are in the Cleveland area on the first or third Saturday of each month, I have some great news for you. At 6812 Woodland Avenue, between the hours of 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., they are giving away free groceries. Now, you do not have to show anything to get these groceries. You don't have to show proof of residence. You don't have to show proof of income. You don't have to show anything. The only thing that you have to show is that you show up and be there. And not only are you getting a free bag of groceries, but you are also getting free clothing for both yourself and any children. But listen, it doesn't stop there, because in addition to the free groceries and the free clothing, you are going to get a free home cooked hot lunch. And that lunch is served between 11:30 and 1:30. So you get a bag of groceries, you get clothing for yourself and any children that are with you, and you go home with a home-cooked meal, a hot home-cooked meal on your stomach. So as you hear me say all the time, you cannot beat that with a hockey stick. And where and when is this again, you say? The first and third Saturday of the month at 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. We thank Major Care Ministries. We thank the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. We thank William Simple Church of God in Christ, who provides the facility for this. They've been doing this almost since the beginning of the pandemic, and they continue to do so. So we're going to, as long as they can continue to do it, we're going to continue to shout them out each and every week here on the right side. For those of you that are new to this program, this is what we do. We talk sports, we talk politics and the issues of the day. I throw some topics out on the table. I give my take on those topics, and then we invite you to call with your take on those same topics at 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. Now, you do not always have to agree with me. In fact, that makes for good debate. We just ask that your take be on topic, that it be concise, and that you do not ramble, because if you do, then you're going to hear the sound of Mr. Dial Tone in your ear. If you are not yet registered to vote, why not? But if you are not, wherever you're listening to me throughout this country, please contact your Board of Elections in your county to see what you need to do to register to vote. Where I reside in Cuyahoga County in Ohio, the primary is being held on May the 3rd. So if you're not registered to vote in Ohio, and specifically in Cuyahoga County, you cannot vote in the upcoming primary. That deadline has passed. However, that does not mean that you still should not go register, because you should, because you will be registered in time to participate in the general election in November. And just in case you think that your vote does not count, that you're only one person and one person does not make a difference, first of all, that's not true. Secondly, those who are opposed to you voting don't think that. That is why they have enacted voter suppression laws in various states throughout this country, like Florida and Texas and Georgia. So apparently there are people in power who believe that your vote counts, and they're doing everything that they can do to suppress that vote. Even here in the state of Ohio, there is legislation pending that is an attempt to stop people from voting. So if you are not registered, register now so that you can vote either in your primary election in states where it's not too late for you to vote, or if it is too late for you to vote in the primary election like it is here in the state of Ohio, then you can then still vote in the general election in November. Now, here's the importance of that. Whether you realize it or not, politics dictates everything in your life, basically from the cradle to the grave. For example, elections determine what your tax base is going to be. Elections determine what your school system is going to be like. Elections determine now what the curriculum within that school system is going to be. Elections determine how good or how bad, in some cases, your health, your safety department, like your fire, your police, your EMS, is going to be. Elections determine hospitals and where they're going to be built. Elections determine the cost of your Medicare. Well, in your, what I should say, excuse me, your prescription drugs is what I meant to say. Elections that determine the cost of your prescription drugs. Elections determine the cost of living. Elections determine what the cost of gasoline, clothing, food, etc. is going to cost. So as you see, even in churches, elections have determined that given churches the taxes exemption that they have. So every aspect of your life, be it in your social life, be it in your career life, be it in your educational life, be it even in your worship life, for those of you who do have a worship life. Elections determine a very significant percentage of what that life is going to be. So, why then do you sit at home and allow other people to make decisions for you? Because that is what you are doing. When you don't vote, you really are voting. You're voting to allow, someone like me, for example, who does vote, to make decisions for you. I'm sure that you would not want me to come into your household and tell you how much money you should spend and how you should raise your children and what schools they should go to and what doctors they should see and on all of that, what television programs you should look at. I'm sure you don't want me to do that. Well, listen, by you not voting,
Caller.
That's exactly what you do. So right now, on our hotline, I want to welcome to our program, to No Static Radio, and also to the right side. I want to welcome 11th District in Ohio congressional candidate Nina Turner to the right side. Thank you, Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner, welcome to the right side and welcome to No Static Radio.
Here she is. She's calling again.
Okay, one moment. We're trying to work out the technical here. While we're working this out, as I was saying, and we'll have Nina Turner on very shortly. As I was saying, elections are very, very important. Every election is local.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, here we are. Ms. Turner, are you there? Ms. Turner, can you hear me?
This is Tennessee.
We're trying to work out the kinks here. We're trying to get her on the air right now. That might be them calling.
Okay.
Okay, we're trying to work out the technical difficulties here to get congressional candidate Nina Turner on the air right now.
Okay, hopefully she can call right back. That wasn't her that was calling on your phone.
Right, it might have been someone from her campaign.
Okay.
All right.
Well, you want to call? I can call.
Okay, yes, if we can call out. And there we are. Here we are.
There we go.
Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner, do we have you? Do we have you on the air?
Hello?
Yes. Welcome to the right side. Who am I speaking with?
Hello.
Yes, hello. We can hear you. Who am I speaking with?
Oh, wow.
Okay, one moment. Let's see if you can call that number right back.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, we're trying to stay with us, folks. We're trying to work this out. This is a very important interview that we're about to embark on. If we can just work out the technical bugs here. We are attempting to get on air with us 11th District in the state of Ohio congressional candidate Nina Turner, who is running in the Democratic primary. Just swipe that.
I got you. Hello.
Who is running in the Democratic primary on May the 3rd.
Hello.
And we are attempting to get her on the air right now. And so we're trying to work out.
Yeah, we're answering.
We're working out the kinks to get her on.
I guess you guys can't hear us on your end. Okay.
In the meantime, some of the things that we will be talking about today, other than our interview with Ms. Nina Turner, is We are on the sports side today. We're going to look at the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant experiment in Brooklyn. Has that been a failure or a success? They are down 2-0 right now in the playoffs in the first round to the Boston Celtics. We're also going to be examining our hero and our zero of the week. Some weird things that took place in Florida this week regarding Disney World. We're also going to revisit the Patrick Leoa case if we can. For those of you that remember last week, we talked about that on the air. Patrick Leoa was the young man, the 27-year-old young man in Flint, Michigan, who's a Congolese refugee and was killed by an unidentified Flint, Michigan police officer on April the 4th. Okay. He was funeralized on yesterday. Until that police officer's name has yet to be released to the general public. That's very curious as to why they are keeping that secret when, as you know, that anytime there is a crime that's committed by someone, especially someone of color, not only are their names released, but their pictures are plastered all over the local news. Okay. And that would have been the case had the opposite happened. Okay, so, thank you. Okay. 1 second, I think we're getting an update on this now. What are they saying?
She said that she's about to do another event now, and she'll call back at 4:45.
Shontel will be on at 4:30.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we're going to have to schedule Ms. Turner later in our program. We're going to try to work her in the second hour. I don't know if that's going to conflict because we do have a guest scheduled for 4:30 this afternoon as well. So we will try to. As a matter of fact, let's take a short break and we'll be right back with you after this short break. Let me call them right back because they can't come on before. It's something you and I have something. How I long campaign for Congress in the 11th district in the state of Ohio.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear us? Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I don't understand.
Yes, can you hear? Are you able to hear me on your end?
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me on your end?
If you can hear me,
Yes.
you can call me at 615-275-9770.
Say something.
All right, can you hear me
Hear
right?
you.
Can you hear me right now?
615-275-9770.
Okay, 275-9770. 615. Go ahead and call.
I got you. Okay, I don't understand. Here we go. Okay, give me 1 sec. You said 615. Gotcha. Let's go.
Hi, this is Tara.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
I don't know what was going on because we could hear you, but you couldn't hear us. All right, well, first of all, thank you, and sorry for all the technical difficulties and what have you that was going on. But welcome to the right side, where we don't, on No Static Radio, we don't bring the static, but we sure not bring the noise. And we have on with us, and Carol, would you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Hi, super excited to be here with the right side. I'm Tara Turrentine. I'm honored to serve as the campaign manager for Nina Turner for Congress. How are you?
We're good. We're so glad to have you with us today. And as the campaign manager for the Nina Turner campaign, what would you say are some of the biggest items or issues in the 11th district in the state of Ohio that this district faces? And what are some of the platforms or programs that Ms. Turner has in her campaign, should she be elected, to address some of these issues?
Well, thank you so much for that question. You know, one of the biggest challenges and why this race is so important is because Cleveland and parts of the greater Cleveland area, but Cleveland particularly is the poorest, largest city of its size. Mm-hmm. And it has had that designation for the last couple of years. And so when we talk about national issues, we're really talking about how do we create an agenda that is going to lift the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class of Cleveland. And the one person that is standing in the gap for those families is Nina Turner. She's someone who has been on the front lines fighting for working families ever since she was in the state Senate, fighting against Senate Bill 5, protecting the right to unionize, making sure that workers across all industries had good wages, standing in the gap between working families and corporations that are trying to buy this election right now. And so when you think about what does it mean for this community, if we can lift a city like Cleveland, in a state like Ohio, where the minimum wage is $8.80 an hour and gas is $4 a gallon, working folks are having to make some tough choices right now. With inflation at a 40-year high, working families are having to, decide between which basic necessities are they going to be able to buy. With food, gas, and everything else going up higher than ever before, we need someone like Nina Turner that's committed to an agenda to lift working families. What is that agenda? It means that we need a minimum $15 an hour minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And that's why our campaign is paying $15 an hour to our staffers and canvassers, because we know that it's going to make a difference to families. We also know that that's not enough, but a $15 minimum wage will make a difference. That's why we need Medicare for all, because more people in this country go into bankruptcy over medical debt than anything else. And so when we talk about having a congressperson that's committed to working families, you need to be able to have health care as a human right. And Nina Turner has been a champion for Medicare for All for decades. We're talking about policies that lift working families. So what does that mean? That means a family medical leave, so that if you need to be able to take care of a loved one, you can do that without the fear of losing your job. Canceling 100% of student debt. This is a policy that's not just about students, but it's about parents who have tried to give a better life for their children, and they're saddled with student debt. And not even just about parents, but it disproportionately benefits the Black community, because Black women have more student debt than anybody else.
Yep.
And so that's why she talks about canceling student debt. So this race is important, because if we can do that in a place like Cleveland, then you're talking about lifting not just anybody, but everybody when it comes to closing the economic gap for working families. And so that's why we're working so hard to get Nina Turner to Congress.
And Kara, those are some very commendable goals, but the realism of it is this, that with the exception of the student loan, the forgiveness of the student loan debt, because that's something that President Biden can do by executive order. The
That's
other
right.
things that you're talking about regarding health care for all, Medicare for all rather, and the $15 an hour minimum wage, those are things that can go through the House in the Congress, but for those to be enacted, they have to be passed in the Senate. And given the makeup of the Senate right now, with the 50-50 split and the voting history and the voting records of Senators Kristen Sinema from Arizona and Joe Manchin from West Virginia, how do you get around that frustration? I mean, for example, the Build Back Better Act passed the House. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed the House. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act all passed the House. But once they got to the Senate, they died on the floor of the Senate. Some didn't even make it to the floor of the Senate. So how can you accomplish these goals given the makeup, the bicameral system that we have in this country?
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how all of the policies that you just named, America wants them. If you ask the average voter in America, these policies are popular. They want their voting rights protected. They want health care. They want student loan debt cancellation. And so you're right. You do have a few that are standing as the front people for probably some others that are blocking the president's agenda. And that is why we need someone in Congress that can go in there and give folks the courage to be able to stand up and get this done. If you look back at the passing of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, an important and incredible bill that's going to invest a lot of dollars into roads and bridges and infrastructure, there was an opportunity to tie that bill to the Build Back Better. They were tied together.
Right.
But unfortunately, some of our members were convinced that if we voted for the bill, the infrastructure bill separately, that somehow we would come to a place where the Build Back Better could get passed on its own. And there were just a few members that said, look, we can't trust Sinema and Manchin to do the right thing. We need to keep these bills tied together. What was in that bill? All of the human infrastructure investment that we know people need right now. So when we talk about, child care, when we talk about extending the tax credits for child tax credits,
Family Leave Act,
permanent, and Family Leave Act, what we've got to have is leadership in Congress that's able to work strategically, because the people want it. And what we know is that when the people are putting the pressure on the outside for these policies, Congress will move. But when we're willing to accept that just a few can say no, then we don't make any progress. And when people are suffering, like they are across Greater Cleveland, that is unacceptable. That's why we need a member of Congress for this area that can go up there and put pressure in a way that says, look, we can do this. We can galvanize. Nobody does that like Nina Turner. She's traveled across this nation helping to make these ideas a possibility. It's not a far-off possibility to have health care for all when over 1 million people have died in a pandemic. This is the time to do it. People died in part, not just because of the COVID-19, but because they didn't have health care.
Well, with
to
COVID,
even get preventative access.
Yeah, what it did
So
is expose the
yes,
disparity in healthcare for between poor communities in this country and those
that's
that are
right.
more wealthy. You know, the
That's
pandemic just
right.
exposed that. I want to ask you this question because regardless of who wins this primary, if Nina Turner wins or if the incumbent Congresswoman Brown wins, the national narrative right now among all the political pundits is that the Republican Party is going to take over the House and possibly the Senate in these midterm elections. That's what you're hearing, no matter if you listen to
Mhm.
Fox or MSNBC or
Mhm.
CNN, whomever the case may be. So, and the reason that they're giving, the number one reason that I'm hearing across the board is lack of motivation among the Democratic base. In other words, for those who came out in 2020 and put Joe Biden and Kamala Harris into the White House, that gave Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff Georgia and at least
Mhm.
got the Senate back to where it's a even 50-50 split. They're saying that that base is not motivated. So what can be done, regardless
Mhm.
of whether Ms. Turner wins or Congresswoman Brown wins, what can be done in order to motivate this base to make sure that the Democratic Party does not lose control of the House or the Senate, especially given the makeup of the Republican Party today, where you've got 40% who believe that the 2020 presidential election was fraudulent, 25% adhere to the QAnon conspiracies.
Mhm.
So what can we do as a voter base to motivate people to come out and vote so that if Ms. Turner wins, she can get uh, the Family Leave Act through the Senate because the Democrats will control the Senate, so that some of these issues that you're being to talk about can get not only get through the House but pass the Senate as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a moment where we are counting on our president to do what he can do. You said it at the top of the segment. He can cancel student debt right
Mm-hmm.
now with an
Mm-hmm.
executive order. That's over 47 million people and their families. And we're talking about a majority black and brown people, but mostly black women that would benefit from him making that move. And we know that black women is oftentimes heralded as the backbone of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Let's go ahead and make that move, get black women the economic relief that they need from student debt. When you lift black women, you're lifting the whole family, you're lifting the whole community, and black women are going to get out there and deliver.
Mm-hmm.
The organizations across this nation that invest in black women candidates, invest in black women causes will be excited and motivated and be able to transfer that into the community. That's one step that can happen right now. And we know that the American people are with it across all creeds, races, backgrounds. Our students are graduating with debt in one hand and a degree in the other. And we can do something about that. And this is a moment that the president can turn the tide on the midterm elections. The other thing that we've got to do is battle the voter chaos that has been caused in many of these states through the redistricting process. And that is going to take Democratic leadership at the party level that is willing to focus in on voter education,
Right.
Making sure our people are ready to vote, partnering. We're having an event today at Holy Trinity Church, partnering with faith leaders who are oftentimes the first to hear about somebody not being able to pay their light bill. They're the first to hear about somebody needing help with their rent. They are oftentimes frontline resources along with the nonprofit community. And so we need, that connection and that relationship to make sure that our people are educated about what is going on. A lot of folks are just out of the loop. And even here in Ohio, turnout is more than 40% down.
Yes.
So folks, mm-hmm.
Yes. No, you're right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we talk about what is it going to take to hold the House, the Democrats, our party has to deliver. And there's a lot of ways that we can do that. If we can get Build Back Better passed, get some human infrastructure and some continued relief, extending the child tax credit. Many people are still economically struggling from the pandemic, haven't been able to recover. Black-owned small businesses as well. That is one step. But I believe that if we can get on board with what Nina Turner has been talking about for a very long time, along with many others in that Congress right now, is that if we can cancel student debt, that will inject some energy and some fire because it's going to lift working families that are having to deal with high inflation, paying rent and mortgages that are, especially rent that has gone up well above wages, and then having to pay almost a student debt bill that's almost as much as your rent. That's something we can do right now. And so if we can get that done, I think we can pull out a 2022 midterm election where Democrats are on the winning side. And we've got to say this about Nina Turner, is that if it goes the other way and Republicans are in control, she was one of the most effective state senators in a Republican-controlled state house that Ohio has had. So she was able to get things done even in a Republican-controlled environment. And that's another reason we've got to get her to Congress.
And you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we shouldn't bring the noise. And we have the campaign director of the Nina Turner campaign on with us right now on a call-in interview. You mentioned about redistricting. And yesterday in the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, and I'll say his name correctly this time, because normally when I say his name, I call him Governor Death Sentence. But I digress. Signed into legislation with the state legislature of the state of Florida, eliminating 2 predominantly African American districts in the state of Florida, one of which is represented by Val Demings. How concerned is candidate Turner and her campaign with the possibility of gerrymandering here in the state of Ohio, so that even if she is fortunate enough to win the primary and then win the general in November, that what's to stop her this district, which I'm a part of, from being gerrymandering right out of possibility, out of existence, I should say.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's talk about that. You know, there are a couple of ways that we get here when it comes to redistricting. One is the tenure process. And Nina Turner was in the state Senate 10 years ago when the current map that was used last year was created, and she voted against that map for this very reason. If we're going to protect Black representation across this country, one, we've got to make sure that our members are partnering with the state and local officials to ensure that those areas are growing. You lose seats automatically when your population goes down. And so that is how Ohio lost a seat, because Cleveland is losing population, and that caused the whole state to have to be redrawn in a way that could have caused this district to not be majority minority, but they were able to keep it as of the current map.
Okay.
The second thing, though, is that it's important that our elected officials, when we talk about maintaining, especially Black representation, they've got to be able to raise money from everyday people. Corporations are fickle.
Exactly.
Nina Turner is funded by everyday people, not big oil. She's not taking money from Navient. She's not taking money from pharmaceutical companies or major corporations. She's not doing that because when they get ready to spend their money on your opponent, then you don't have a base to be able to raise money from. So she raises her money from everyday people, millions of dollars, $5, $10, $27 at a time, of folks that want to see someone committed to working people be elected. On the other side of this race, we have an individual that is taking a lot of corporate money, and they may want you today, but if they decide that they want to prop up someone else that may not look like us, and I'm a Black woman too, if they decide that they don't want somebody that looks like us, then they can put that money into somebody else, and then all of a sudden this community is no longer, represented by a person of color. So that is what is also dangerous when Black elected officials get tied up in this corporate money, because those folks are not in Cleveland. They're not in the greater Cleveland area. They don't care that 1 and 2 children are in poverty and that their parents are in poverty too. It's okay to say we're building roads and bridges, but if I can't pay my rent, these corporations that are pouring $2 million in this race right now. They don't care about that. If you can't pay your rent, these organizations that are pumping TV ads right now for our opponent don't care about you. So that is dangerous. They are not, they're trying to buy the power of the seat so that they can put in who they want to put in.
So,
and that is why there's so much money into this race right now against Nina Turner, because when the redistricting is just a part of it, but it's also this corporate money that is impacting Black representation across the country.
So is this what you would refer to, and what we hear referred to quite often as, quote, dark money, unquote? Is this is what you're talking about right now? Is it so-called dark money?
Absolutely. This is money that comes in that's completely blind to the people. You don't know who the donors are. You don't know what they believe in. You don't know what they're committed to. And 99% of the time, they're not your neighbor. They're not someone that you can reach out and touch. There's some far-off big corporation or entity that is trying to buy power.
So this is why
for Black communities.
So this is why we need campaign finance reform then
Absolutely.
as well to be able to put an end to this. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, and we have Kara, who is I'm sorry, Kara, what is your last name? I'm sorry.
Kara Turrentine.
Turrentine, that's right. We have Kara Turrentine. I apologize, I should have asked you that in the beginning.
Thank you.
We have Kara Turrentine, campaign manager from the Nina Turner for Congress campaign in the 11th District here in the state of Ohio. Kara, we thank you so much for coming on. When you were talking about Nina's legislative record, what would you say to our audience who may not be as familiar with her as some others are? What would you say to the audience from a legislative perspective when she was a member of the Senate here in the state of Ohio? From a legislative perspective, what were two of her biggest legislative successes when she was in the Senate in Ohio?
Well, I have to start with saying that she grew up in the Lee Harvard community, that she graduated from JFK high school, that she's the oldest of 7 children. Her father, a truck driver, her mother, a nurse's aide. She grew up poor right here in Cleveland. And she worked very, very hard to better herself and her family. She was the first to go to college. And she was a dreamer that was able to achieve and help lift her entire family. And that is what led her into public service. So she went into the city council work and the state senate work with an understanding and the lived experiences of what it means to be poor and Black in America. And that is an incredible experience that many of the members right now don't have. And so when she talks about increasing the minimum wage, that's a fight that she's been working on, right here in Ohio before it was a huge, national platform. She was talking about protecting the reproductive rights of women in the city council long before it was a huge national platform, today. And she's traveled the country to lift those issues and make them, even more prominent and popular. But she was doing that work right here in the city. And so when we think about, the way she's protected voting rights, the way she's protected unions and working families, the way that she speaks out and speaks truth to power, that is what we need in a nation where everything is going up except our wages. Everything, our quality of life. And because we still elect our leaders, and that's how we need to keep it. We need the people electing our leaders and not Walmart, not Amazon, not billionaires out of Silicon Valley. We need the people electing our leaders. And if we're doing that, then we should send people to Congress that can understand what it means to live the kind of life we have to live so that we can get policies that advance and improve everyday life. And so, Nina Turner was out there with the unions fighting against Senate Bill 5, making sure that people had the right to unionize. She's been out there even just this past 2 weeks with the Starbucks workers that are trying to unionize right here in 2022. She was on the picket line with Sherwin-Williams before they got their contract, helping those workers get better wages because we're building a $50 million headquarters downtown, and that's great, but give the people a raise. That's the kind of congressperson that we need. Somebody that's going to say, you can't forget the everyday mom and dad that are working hard in the city of Cleveland to make this city run. These corporations need to pay their fair share. They need to give their wages, give their workers good pay, good benefits, safe working conditions. That is what they got to do. And we need a congressperson that's not going to take the corporate money, but that's going to stand in the gap for working people and say, no, this isn't right, and we got to do better than this. And we demand that corporations do better by their people. That is what we need. And so she's been doing that all through her legislative career. She's been doing that all across the nation, talking about these issues on national television, lifting them up, and she wants to see Cleveland in a better position, and she can do that from the seat of Congress.
Ms. Turrentine, one last question, and then I'll let you make a closing statement. When you were speaking just a few moments ago about Medicare for all, that's something that, as you said, the majority of American people support, including yours truly. And by the way, her background, just to throw this in, I knew Nina when she was Nina Hudson because I taught at Kennedy. I taught at Kennedy when she was a student there. But I digress. As far as health care for all, that is something, Medicaid for all rather, that is something that a majority of Americans support on both sides, Republican and Democrats. Polls have shown that. The issue is how it's going to be funded. So how does Nina Turner project that something like this would be funded?
You know, there's always the question that comes up when it's time to do something that helps people like us, working folks. Mm-hmm. And when it's time to, give a tax break to an industry that has been irresponsible, we find the money.
Right.
When it's time to bail out Wall Street and save, banks,
or the auto industry,
find the money.
Or the auto industry. Mm-hmm.
We can find the money. When our friends and our allies around the country or around the world need help, we got it. We can find the money.
True.
When our allies overseas need help. And so nobody ever asked that question until it's time to put some resources into working families. America is the wealthiest country in the world. And we have billionaires, ultra wealthy people that are not paying any taxes at all. We got to fix that. We got to fix this tax code. You are paying more taxes than some of the wealthiest people in this country. We can do something about that. So the resources are there. Corporations that are skirting their taxes by sending their money overseas. We can do something about that.
Yes, we can.
And that's not a new concept. That's not a new idea. But there has to be the political will. And there can't be political will when your congressional member is complicit. That's why you got to have someone that's unbought, independent, that takes their money from everyday people. Because if you're getting that corporate money, you won't go vote for a change.
No. That's why some surmise that Senator Sinema did not vote for the Build Back Better because it would have lowered prescription costs, and she's being funded by Big Pharma. So
that's exactly right.
You are speaking the truth right there. So what would you want to say in closing? And first of all, thank you for coming in and standing in for
thank you
for candidate Turner, as she had other obligations. So we thank you so much for coming on today. What would you want to say to our listening audience? We have literally people listening to us all over the world, but specifically to those that are listening to this interview right now in the 11th 11th district in the state of Ohio. What would you want to say to them in closing?
I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share. I apologize, the senator couldn't be on. We got a little crisscross in our schedule, and she'd love to join you. There's one more Saturday left. Maybe we can make that happen. But I want to say to your listening audience that you have a choice. You have a choice in this election to elect one of the most capable, qualified Black women in the country to serve in Congress. Someone who is, from Cleveland, grew up in Lee Harvard, a graduate from John F. Kennedy, educated right here at Cuyahoga County Community College, an alumna of Cleveland State, the Cleveland State University, someone who has invested back in young people as an assistant professor, someone who has been on the front lines talking about the importance of lifting working families since she hit the scene. She's been consistent, she's been diligent, and she's been intentional about saying to the status quo that we can do better by everyday people, and particularly by everyday Black people, that we can do better by our communities, that we don't have to be poor and working poor and barely middle class, but that we can create a country where everybody can live a good life. And this is a district that has a history of fighters. We would not have the 11th Congressional District without the courage and the fight of Congressman Lou Stokes. We wouldn't have the 11th Congressional District if there wasn't a visionary saying, we can do more, we can have more, we can do better. And so what we've got to understand that this race is more than just about Cleveland. It's not about Nina Turner. It's about the fact that there is an effort to buy what Cleveland represents in this country. And if we let corporations buy this seat, then we are on a terrible path. Cleveland is not for sale. And Nina Turner is going to make sure that we get everything we deserve, that we have representation that's accessible. She's going to look out not just for the city, but for the suburbs, making sure that this entire region is funded, is cared for, and that the commitment is there from a leader who knows what it means to have to come from the bottom up. And so I am asking Cleveland to join our campaign. We are knocking 2,000 doors a day across Cleveland. We have canvassers on our paid staff where we're paying them a good living wage. We have volunteers from all over greater Cleveland coming in, knocking doors, talking to their neighbors, join us on the telephone, join us on our text bank. We're going to outrun this money that is trying to buy this seat. And we're feeling really good about this race. We feel like we can definitely win. Early vote right now for Nina Turner. Turn in your mail-in ballot. Go down to the Board of Elections and see us. We're going to be there to greet you. And I thank you so much for having me on today.
And we thank you as well. One quick question, too, before you. The 11th District encompasses the city of Cleveland. And what are some of the other surrounding areas that the 11th District encompasses? I meant to ask you that before, so just as a point of information for our listeners.
You know, the great thing about the new 11th Congressional District is that it does have all of Cleveland, Nina Turner's hometown, where she won by 10 points in the special election. It also has many of the same eastern suburbs of, South Euclid and Cleveland Heights. Shout out to Cleveland Heights Democratic Club endorsement. Thank you so much for that. And then it also has new areas. The district is 30% new, so these folks will be weighing in for the very first time. And it has the city of Lakewood. So if you're out in Lakewood, we'd love to have your support for Nina Turner. And so if you're in the boundaries of Cleveland, send a Clevelander to Congress. If you're in the suburbs in the greater Cleveland area, know that Nina Turner is going to fight for you and your community as well. And so, this is the new 11th Congressional District. It's a new district. It's new people. It's a new time. We have an opportunity to go in a new and better direction. And we welcome you at ninaturner.com.
And thank you. And I was going to ask you where they can get information, but you just gave that. So go to ninaturner.com if you want further information about Nina Turner and her campaign. You can go to ninaturner.com. Thank you so much, Ms. Turntine, for coming on with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You as well. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. And we just had Kara Turntine from the Nina Turner for Congress campaign here on the first hour of our show. We do have a special guest coming up in the second hour of our show, in the last part of the show. So look forward to that. I'm not going to say who it is or where they're from. That's you want to know. You just are going to have to continue to tune in and listen. But right now we're near the 4 o'clock hour, so we're going to take a short break and then we're going to go into our second hour here on No Static Radio, the right side, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Be right back at you after these messages and this music.
Center. If you, a family member, or a friend has been affected by violence, know that violence can affect all parts of your life, sometimes in ways you can't see. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep, it causes you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life. Today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So listen, don't let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. Give them a call at 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They're free, they're 24/7 and confidential. So if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence started today. Call today, get the help you need today. 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And finally, a moment in our history, 365. I'd like to introduce to some and reintroduce to others Marie Van Britten Brown. She was an inventor of the first home security system. She's also credited with the invention for the first closed-circuit television. Brown was born in Queens, New York on October 22nd, 1922, and resided there until her death on February 2nd, 1999, at the age of 76. Her father was born in Massachusetts, and her mother was from Pennsylvania. The patent for the invention was filed in 1966, and it later influenced modern home security systems that are still used today. Brown's invention was inspired by the security risk at her home faced in the neighborhood where she lived. Marie Brown worked as a nurse, and her husband, Albert Brown, worked as an electronics technician. Their work hours were not a standard 9 to 5, and the crime rate in Queens, New York City neighborhood was very high. Even when the police were contacted in the event of an emergency, the response time tended to be low and slow. As a result, Brown looked for ways to increase her level of personal security. She needed to create a system that would allow her to know who was at her home and contact relevant authorities as quickly as possible. The security system was a basis for the two-way communication and surveillance features of modern security. Her original invention was comprised of peepholes, a camera, monitors, and a two-way microphone. The final element was an alarm button that could be pressed to contact the police immediately. 3 peepholes were placed on the front door at different height levels. The top one was for tall persons, the bottom was for children, and the middle was for anyone of average height. At the opposite side of the door was the camera attached with the ability to slide up and down to allow the person to see through each peephole. The camera picked up images that would reflect the monitor via a wireless system. The monitor could also be placed in any part of the house to allow you to see who was at the door. There was also a voice component to enable Brown to speak to the person outside. If the person was perceived as an intruder, the police would be notified with the push of a button. If the person was a welcome guest or expected visitor, the door would be unlocked via remote control. Marie Brown and Albert Brown filed for this patent on August 1st, 1966, under the title Home Security System Utilizing Television Surveillance. Their application was approved December 2nd, 1969. Brown's invention gained her a well-deserved recognition, including an award from the National Scientist Committee and an interview with the New York Times. Brown's invention laid the foundation for later security systems that make use of the features such as video monitoring, remote control door locks, push-button alarm triggers, instant messaging to security providers and police, as well as two-way voice communication. Her invention is still used by small businesses, small offices, single-family homes, multi-unit dwellings such as apartments and condominiums. The Brown's patent was later referenced by 13 other inventors, including some as recent as 2013. Brown was mother of 2 children, one of whom, Norma Brown, went on to be a nurse and inventor. We salute Marie Van Britton Brown, a trailblazer in our history.
Yeah. Yes, and we do salute you. And as usual, every time we do this, it's educational, not only for you, I'm sure, but for me as well, who prides himself on knowing our history. And yet I learn something new each time. So thank you once again for that, Marie.
You're welcome.
We want to thank once again Kara Turrentine from the Nina Turner for Congress campaign. If any of you that were listening have any comments or thoughts on what she had to say in our first hour, you can weigh in at 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. If you were trying to call in while she was on the air, we apologize, but when we do have a call-in guest, we leave the line for them so that we can conduct the interview. But if you have some thoughts or observations on what she said, then you can feel free to call in now with those thoughts and observations. I want to talk about this because we talked a little about this with Ms. Turrentine when she was on in the first hour, but I want to go more in depth into this topic right now. And this was not something that I planned, but it's something that came out of this interview that I think that we need to highlight.
Mm-hmm.
I am hearing a lot from my observations of watching cable news and listening to political talk shows on the radio. I consume those things to get information so that I can come on this show and talk about topics that are in the news and are popular right now or need to be talked about. And a prevailing theme, and we brought this out with Ms. Turrentine, a prevailing theme that I hear no matter what the network is that one, that it's almost a fait accompli that the Republicans are going to take back the House and possibly the Senate in the midterm elections. I'm going to address that in a moment. And two, that the voting base of the Democratic Party is not energized, that there's not enough being done at the top from the president and also from the chairman of the Democratic Party to gin up the base, if you will, to ignite the base and get them excited about coming out to vote. Also, one of the large hindrance that is going to allow this to happen, at least in some pundits' opinion, is the voter restriction law. So we have all of these things that are working. So let me address these one by one. First of all, the idea that it's a fait accompli that the Republican Party is going to take back the House and possibly even the Senate in the midterm election. Well, not as Lee Corso says on College Game Day, not so fast, my friend. That doesn't necessarily have to happen. And it kind of bothers me when I hear talking heads on no matter what network, be it MSNBC, CNN, or even Fox News. So you're getting it from all sides of the spectrum. MSNBC on the left, CNN in the middle, and Fox News on the right. That this is, as I said, a fait accompli, but it doesn't necessarily have to be so. They're saying some of the factors that are leading into this is that there's voter dissatisfaction across the country because of the high inflation that we're seeing right now. Well, let me address that for a moment. Part of the reason, and I'm no economic expert, but even I know this. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason that we're seeing such a high inflation now is that we, for about 2 years, had a slow to almost dead economy based on something that you might have heard of. It's called the pandemic, where businesses were closed, people weren't going to restaurants and theaters and movie theaters, people weren't driving as much.
Right, come on now.
All right. Goods weren't being purchased as much because people were not going out because of the pandemic. All of those industries took an economic hit during the pandemic. As a matter of fact, I can remember back in April, about 2 years ago this time, that gas had gone down all the way to about $1.75 a gallon in some places. And the reason for that is that the cost of oil was down because people were not driving, people were not flying, the airline industry was slow. So all of that was a contributing factor. You fast forward to 2 years later, the time that we are now, people are now starting to do what? They're starting to drive again. They're starting to take trips. They're starting to fly again. They're starting to make purchases of goods and services again. Those are starting to spike. So quite naturally, although it doesn't have to be this way, but given human nature and the nature of the economic system in this country, when there is demand up, in other words, when there is a high demand, then you're going to have higher prices. So even though Exxon and Mobil and Shell made 7% profits last year, and BP had an 8% profit margin last year, they are raising the price of gas because the price of oil has increased, mainly because of the demand for more oil because people are traveling more, which brings me to the fact that this is why we need to look at alternative energy sources. We need to look at and develop more electric cars, and that was part of what was part of the Build Back Better uh, bill that President Biden wanted, that climate control and to control the environment and depend less on fossil fuels, because if that demand goes down, those prices are going to go down, and electric cars are more friendly to the environment than the gas guzzlers that we're driving now. So it is a natural fact that when you have a spike like we've had in the last year or so, a spike in consumer shopping, a spike in travel, a spike in all of the areas that were dormant during the pandemic, the costs are going to go up. And to lay the blame of this inflation and to lay the blame of these higher costs that we see at the pump, at the grocery stores, etc., to lay that on the Biden administration, and those who buy that are either lying, lazy, or they know better. It's just pure politics. All right? This was going to happen regardless of who was in the White House. Once the restrictions of the pandemic started to go away and go down, it was inevitable that inflation was going to come. This is not going to be a permanent thing. Economic experts all over have predicted that the economy is going to return to normal within the next 6 to 8 months or so. Don't believe me? Don't. Go on the internet and do research and look up what economic experts are saying. So the Republican Party is running on this. And if you're an astute and intelligent voter, should be able to see through that. Okay, that's number one. Also, too, let me speak to the voting base.
He's on air right now.
All of those who are saying that I'm not going to go out and vote because Joe Biden and the Democrats did not do anything that they said they were going to do. That is not accurate. Yes. All right? Joe Biden has appointed more minority federal judges in this short period of time than many presidents have in history. That's number one. Joe Biden appointed, nominated, and we saw confirmed, kept that campaign promise of the first black woman on the Supreme Court, and Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. what he can, and then as far as Build Back Better, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Welcome to the Right Side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Frances on Doggett, and I'm calling from my home, and I can't get it on. That's what I get that you hear in the background.
Okay, I don't know what to tell you. I believe it sounds like Alexa, so you're just gonna have to say, Alexa, play no static radio, and you should be able to get it. If not, I don't know what else to tell you, but you should say, Alexa, play no static radio, and hopefully it will come on.
So it hasn't. Okay, if I can get you back, I'll listen. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I was saying, for those who are saying that they're not going to go out and vote this year, that they don't see any reason to vote in the primary or the general election because the Biden administration has not done anything. They have not kept their promises. I told you, they did keep the promise regarding the nomination of a black woman to the Supreme Court, and that happened. And we do have Judge Brown Jackson now. There have been several appointments to federal circuit courts by this administration of black and brown judges, I should say. So that has taken place. Now, as far as the big ticket items, I'm going to run them off. It's John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and the forgiveness of student loan debt. Let me deal with each one of those one at a time. Number one, the John Lewis, and the Build Back Better. I meant that as well. So let's go with it. Build Back Better. President Biden presented to the Congress of the United States the Build Back Better Act. He did it last year. It was a $3.7 billion bill that came before the Congress, that passed the Congress of the United States, strictly along partisan lines. All the Democrats in the House voted for it and all the Republicans voted against it, even though this bill would contribute to repairing bridges, because the bridges in the United States are falling down. London Bridge is falling down. Studies have been done that a large portion of bridges in the U.S. are at third world standards, would have fixed roads, would have fixed the infrastructure. Infrastructure has been talked about for years by presidents that I can remember all the way back to George H.W. Bush, have talked about fixing the infrastructure. Finally, we have something that can fix the infrastructure. It passed the Congress, but got to the Senate, and only a portion of it passed, and not the full bill, because the Republicans were not vote for it, and Senator Manchin and Sinema did not vote for it so that they could carve it out around the filibuster. This would have provided for lower Medicare costs and lower prescription costs. This would have provided for the Family Leave Act. This would have extended the child tax credit. This would have done all of this and more. And so the reason that we don't have it is not because that Joe Biden reneged on a promise of his. The reason that we do not have it is that the 50 Republicans in the Senate, I want you to place the focus on really what it really should be. 50 Republicans in the Senate and 2 renegade Democrat senators did not vote for this. If Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin would have voted for the Build Back Better Act, it would have passed, because they could have carved it out. They could have done a carve out of the filibuster, and we could have that. That's number one. Number two, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, once again, passed through the Congress, once again, strictly on partisan lines, got to the Senate, there was a compromise attempted. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, and Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, both black senators, came together to work a compromise on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that would have been palatable so that it could have passed the Senate. Okay, this did not pass, did not even get to the floor of the Senate because they could not agree on the compromise. And you want to know why they couldn't agree on the compromise? Because there were some things that were a non-starter. And the non-starter on this that Senator Scott wanted was to get rid of qualified immunity. That was a non-starter. And then he tried to frame it in that the Democrats wanted to defund the police, which is not true. I'm sorry, hold on one second. And so it did not even reach the floor of the Senate. So here again, this bill passed through the House along partisan lines and then got to the Senate and couldn't even get a vote on it in the Senate because it never even saw the light of the day on the floor of the Senate. Was that Joe Biden's fault? Did he renege on a campaign promise? No, he did not renege on a campaign promise. He supported the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. It passed the House. It did not even get to the floor of the Senate. For those of you who do not understand, let me do some education here. For a bill to pass, it first has to pass through the House, through the Congress. And then that bill we have what's called a bicameral system of legislation here in this country. It first has to pass the House. And then once it passes the House, it then has to pass the Senate. Normally it needs at least 60 votes to pass the Senate. And then it goes to the desk of the president, where the president can either sign it into law or he can veto it. If you do not have the 60 votes in the Senate, it can still pass the Senate if enough senators from one party vote to get it passed. And then if they are in control of the White House, if that party, so in this case, the split in the Senate right now is 50 Republican, 50 Democrat. And if the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would have got to the floor of the Senate, there's no doubt in my mind that all 50 Republican senators would have voted against it. Had all 50 Democratic senators voted for it, however, they could have still passed it because they could have done a carve out of the filibuster, and the vice president, who is Kamala Harris, could have broken the tie and that bill could have gotten passed. But it never even got to the floor of the Senate because of the bicameral system that we are operating again. However, this is not Joe Biden reneging on a promise. This was done by, or not done by, the Senate of the United States. The same thing with the John Lewis voting rights. That didn't make it to the floor of the Senate either, where it could be voted in. It never even made it. It passed the House, once again, along party lines. Once again, the president, now he came along too late. He should have spoke more forcefully and earlier on it, but he did come out and speak on the importance of passing this legislation. And so here's the solution. This is why you cannot stay at home and throw up your hands and say, forget it, I'm not voting. The only way that you're going to get this legislation, before I get to that though, let me talk about the one thing that he can do that he has not done, that he made a promise that he is going to do, and why he hasn't done it yet, I don't know. The president can forgive student loan debt by executive order. Now, let me tell you something about the executive order, though. An executive order only lasts as long as that president is in office.
Oh, wow.
This is not law, as opposed to when something is passed into the Senate and it's signed into law, passed the House and passed the Senate and then signed into law. An executive order only lasts as long as that president is in office, which means that the next president can come in and rescind that executive order, just as Joe Biden did when he came into office in January of last year. He rescinded several executive orders, which, by the way, I'm glad he did do. He rescinded several executive orders that then former President Trump put forth. But at least he can do this so that those who have student loan debt can be freed of that student loan debt by executive order. And the president did promise during his campaign that he was going to forgive student loan debt. Now, that is something that he can do. So that is something that you are have a legitimate stand on if you're saying that he has not done what he said he was going to do. He's reneged on that promise, and he, to this point, he has yet to do it yet. So I'm not going to say he's reneged on it. He's been slow on it for whatever reason. I don't know why he's dragging his feet on this, especially given
Shontel Brown.
Welcome to the right side. Is this Congresswoman Brown that we have on?
This is Congresswoman Brown. How are you?
How are you? We're so glad to have you. We were just, I was just educating our audience about the bicameral system that we have in this country and why we still need to come out and vote and not adhere to what we're hearing all across the land about how people are not motivated. But I can talk about that at a later time. But well, you're no stranger here, so we just welcome you once again to the right side, and we're so glad to have you with us this afternoon. And Congresswoman Brown, I know your time is just crazy, so I'll get right into it now. What are, in your opinions, and especially since you've been in Congress since last year, what are the biggest issues that face the 11th district here in Ohio, and what can and what will you do to address those issues to hopefully to alleviate them?
Oh, thank you for that. And thank you for having me again. I mean, it is always a pleasure to be on your show, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity of your audience so that I can share what I've been doing as well as what those issues are and how we've been handling them. So in Cleveland, the things that I hear about are cost of living, crime, and COVID relief. And so as it relates to those issues, we've already started taking some steps to create job opportunities, historic investment by way of the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is going to deliver billions of dollars to deal with decades of disinvestment in our infrastructure. So what that means is those potholes that we've been dealing with for years and those crumbling bridges that we've been dealing with for decades and all of those things, we're going to get $1.8 billion just in road repair. So that in and of itself, $1.8 billion is going to create thousands of jobs and provide people with opportunities. And we're talking good paying union jobs, things that will open up opportunities for apprenticeships, because when you bring in that type of resources into the community, it's going to be enough to spread the wealth around. $96.7 million for the bridges alone. I had a press conference about a month and a half ago where I had some of the folks from the trades organization who said that $96.7 million just for the bridges would create hundreds of jobs. So then when you put the exclamation point on the fact that we're bringing billions, that is going to be the economic boost to deal with the cost of living. And I think when you start dealing with cost of living issues, then you inevitably can help folks that may find themselves doing some criminal activity from time to time, helping to mitigate that by giving them opportunities to put them on a successful pathway. But in addition to that, the Biden-Harris administration is going to be providing resources to our local government so that they can
provide our law enforcement with adequate training, not so much that we are experiencing the traumas of racial implicit biases that we've experienced historically, but making sure that they understand some of the cultural nuances that can be had when you're dealing with different parts of the community. So making investments in that. The president also just put forth an executive order to deal with ghost guns. Ghost guns, they don't have any registration marks, and so these are often the guns that are unregistered and get into the hands of some of the most heinous criminals that cause some of the most deadly crimes. And so the president is already taking steps to deal with that. And then when we talk about COVID relief, we're still, I don't know if we're midway or at the end of this pandemic, as we still battle with numbers that try to sneak up on us every now and again, but making sure we're making continuous investments to battle against the pandemic and giving the hospitals and local communities and government agencies the resources that they need to provide folks with the vaccines and PPE, the things that are to help keep our community safe. So we're doing a lot, and I'm proud to say, as a newly elected member of Congress, I've had my hand in delivering some of these resources to deal with the issues that are facing us. And so I thank you so much for that question, because I could go on and on and on, Jeff, about the amazing work that this Congress has been able to do under some extenuating circumstances. I mean, yes, we've got inflation, we're dealing with the pandemic, and we've also got what's happening over in Ukraine that have created some scenarios that are unprecedented. But this administration and Democrats continue to deliver despite those challenges.
Oh, thank you. So both you and your opponent, at least in the Democratic primary, both you and your opponent have similar stands on the issue. So let's look at just a couple of them. First of all, Medicare for all and the elimination of student loan debt. How would you progress on these issues, and how would you propose that those would be funded?
Well, I think the way that we deal with these things are making sure that the wealthy, the well-connected, and the corporations pay their fair share of taxes. So when it comes to student loan debt, I really believe that that is one of the greatest barriers to economic prosperity that stands in the way, especially in communities of color. I think Black women are one of the largest demographics that are impacted by student loans. And so, yes, of course, it would be nice to be able to cancel all student loan debt, but I think that folks who are in a position to pay back their student loans should not be let off the hook. I mean, I think we have to allow for a needs analysis to make sure that folks who are in a position to pay do pay, but those who cannot, or those who are find themselves in a difficult financial situation due to their student loans, we have to take that into account. And I think there's a segment of this population that has, again, been disparately impacted by economic injustice, if you will, and student loans will fall under that equation. As it relates to Medicare for all, I've said it during the special election, and I said it again. I'm full support of Medicare for all, but what I realize is that it takes 217 votes to get things done. No one person can do it all. So what we have to recognize is the environment in which we're in, and sometimes it is easier to get small wins and move the ball forward so we can get to the next step. So a public option is probably the most expeditious way to get to that. But yes, I've always been on record as a supporter for Medicare for all.
And regardless of which one of you, either yourself or your opponent, wins this primary on May the 3rd, pundits all across the country, be them on the right, the left, or the center, no matter what network you listen to, all the talking heads have made it almost like it's a fait accompli that the Republicans are going to take control of the House and the Senate. If that is true, given the makeup of the Republican Party right now, where 40% of the Republican Party don't even believe that President Biden is the duly elected president of the United States, another 15% believe in QAnon and the QAnon theories and all of that. Many have said that that's who Senator Cruz and Senator Cowley and Blackburn were playing, Graham were playing to during the Senate confirmation hearings of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So, given that, what can the Democratic Party do to make sure that it holds on to the House and the Senate? Because if you do win on May 3rd and then win in the general election in November, how difficult is that going to make your job? When I look across the aisle at some of your contemporaries, one whose name I won't mention right now, but was under a investigation yesterday or trial yesterday in the state of Georgia about her inciting the January 6th insurrection. So, how are you going to be able, if you were fortunate enough to be reelected, be able to work in that environment? And I guess it's a twofold question. How can the Democratic Party stop this from happening? And if it does happen, how difficult is that going to make your job?
Well, I appreciate that question as well. Listen, we here in Ohio are very much experiencing voter suppression at its most extensive and egregious way.
Mm-hmm.
This election that we're in right now, we learned about it being about it taking place definitively March 29th. Early voting started April 5th, and we have 30% of the district that is new. So when you take into consideration, Jeff, that currently in Ohio, we have 16 congressional representatives. 16. Of the 16, there are 12 Republicans and 4 Democrats. But when you look at the voter registration, it's more like 55% Republican and 45% Democrat. So a fair balance would say, in the current map, it would be more like 9-6. But because 11,000 folks, either by virtue of moving or failure to fill out the census, we lose a seat. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go from 16 representatives down to 15. And the maps that were proposed have been rejected not once, not twice, but 3 times. And that is because the maps that we're currently running on are configured in such a way that there will be 10 Democratic seats, 10 Republican seats, 2 Democratic seats, and 3 toss-ups. Now, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out how those 3 toss-ups are going to go in a Republican-dominated state. They're going to lean towards the Republicans. And that is why we find ourselves in this sprint of a race. So what that could potentially mean in a narrow majority that we hold right now in Congress, they only need 5 Republican seats to get back the majority. And so the state of Ohio has already positioned itself to pick up potentially 3 of those seats, an extra seat, if you will, going from 12 to potentially 13. But the good news is, Jeff, I have been well received by both my Democrats and my Republicans, because what I've learned being in office, and I'm the only candidate in this race that has had any legislative experience since this pandemic, is that you have to put the people first and not the partisan politics. Now, the Republicans have been the party of no. They have definitely been the party of no. But we also see where there have been some glimmers of hope, with the bipartisan infrastructure law being one of those examples. And we have had some success with getting some things passed, like the omnibus, which increased the Pell Grant and dealt with the Violence Against Women Act, reinstated that, among a number of other things. So I, being the hopeless optimist that you know me to be, Jeff, think that if we focus on the people and the issues, no matter who the majority is, the people of the 11th Congressional District can count on me to be a bridge builder, not a bridge burner, but a bridge builder, to try to do what we can to make sure that our communities get the resources and the service that they deserve, not only that they deserve, but that they need. So I have had success doing that, a proven track record, doing that on county council, and I did it as a city council representative, and even as the first woman and the first Black person ever elected to lead the largest Democratic county party in the state of Ohio. I am willing to work with people who are willing to work with me. So what I have found, the people of the 11th Congressional District want someone who can deliver results, not insults. And so I'm going to be focused, highly focused on making sure that I continue with the tradition of delivering results, no matter who's in the majority.
Congresswoman Brown, how much time do you have left with us? I know that your schedule is pretty full. How much time do we have left with you right now?
I'm not sure. I'm on the phone with you, so until they tell me I gotta get out of here, I think we might have time for one more question.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you this, and then I'm going to allow you to make a closing statement to sum up. Your opponent's campaign has accused, basically, you of accepting what's called quote dark money unquote, and that outside interests are trying to buy this seat. The outside interests that have no or very little interest to no interest on the welfare of the people who reside in the 11th district in the state of Ohio. What is your answer to that? What is your answer about so-called dark money, and what is your answer to that charge from your opponent's campaign?
Well, there's no coordination between campaign and outside campaigns. And what she's referencing as dark money, I have no control over that. I can't encourage them or stop them, just quite frankly. So it is a reach at best. We are talking about a candidate who in the last election cycle outraised me nearly 3-1. So if we're talking about money, she had more of it. And it's really disappointing that is the narrative that she chooses to push in this campaign, because I guess that's the only thing that one can try to do if they don't have a record to run on. I'm running on my record. I'm running on my record of delivering results. I'm running on my record of having expanded my coalition. Many of the people who supported her last time have supported me this time because I've been doing the job well, Jeff. So I have no control over any outside entity. And what I'm grateful for this time around is that disclaimer emphasizes that no campaign candidate or candidate campaign has approved any of those messages. So what I think it does, I've done great work in that a lot of people are willing to support the great work that I've done. But I have no coordination with that. And it's really, I think, a desperate attempt, a sign of desperation of her candidacy, and a desperate attempt to tarnish my good character. I have been very intentional about maintaining high integrity throughout the special election as well as this election. But a person can only take so much, Jeff. So I am a little bit disappointed because I, like many of people, I will say this, I will admit to this, I like many folks had a great deal of respect, but when this candidate started telling lies and grasping at straws and attacking my character, my respect dwindled tremendously. And I think that remains was also true of many of the constituents in the 11th Congressional District. People don't want dirty politicians or people that are attacking other folks. They want to know what your qualifications are and what you're going to do for them, and that's always been my focus.
And very quickly, as a constituent, that's what I want. I don't like campaign ads that talk about, on either side, about what the other person is, and just tell me what you're going to do. So for the record, then, Shontel Brown is not being bought by anyone, correct?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I'm an independent thinker. I take the information and I process it. I want to hear from every side. And I think that it speaks to my ability, again, to work with other folks and that they have confidence in me, that they have a leader who will listen. Nobody wants someone who is so shut off or has all the answers. If I'm the smartest person in the room, Jeff, I'm in the wrong room. Okay, so I think that it's important that we have people that bring a diversity of thought and open mind, and so that we can have fruitful, productive productive conversations so that we can get to positive and prosperous solutions for the district. And that's what I've been about, and that's what I'll continue to be about. Not sound bites, but sound solutions. Not headlines, but headway. Not insults, but results. I am about delivering for the people.
Well, we thank you once again for calling. I know your schedule is crazy. I wish because there's so much more I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to.
I'll come back.
Yeah,
You know, I'm going to come back.
Just from a personal standpoint, I would wanted to know what it was like to be there on January 6th. But so in closing,
well, let me set the record straight because I wasn't there on the 6th, but okay. I will say this: some of my colleagues who are there, they're seeking to retire or not seek re-election or run for other offices. Over 30 Democrats have decided the halls of Congress has become too toxic for them. So it's so critical that we keep level-headed folks in this position because what we don't want to do is run away good folks who are committed to doing the work. And so these are folks that have been in Congress for literally, longer than I've been in office, my entire political career, if you will. But what they are experiencing and seeing is unlike anything they've ever experienced and seen in the history of Congress. And so they are opting out. But we need to make sure that we're opting good people in, not people who are divisive, but people who are willing to unify. And that's what the people of the 11th Congressional District can count on from me.
Well, thank you. And in closing, Congresswoman Brown, what would you like to say to our listening audience? We literally have people listening to us all over the world. So in general to those, but specifically to those who are in the 11th District of Ohio, what would you like to say to them in closing?
I know there's been a lot of confusion around this race actually taking place. The election is underway. Early voting started April 5th, and the last day to vote is May 3rd. So if you live in the 11th Congressional District, it has been reconfigured. Check out your Board of Elections and cast your vote. And if you can, cast your vote early. If you live in Cuyahoga County, that's real easy to do. You just go down to 2925 Euclid Avenue. It's on the corner of 30th and Euclid, and you can cast your ballot. I did it yesterday. Took me less than 10 minutes just to get in and get out and vote all the way from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket. And that's what we need to do. Make sure you vote from the top to the bottom, front and back of your ballot. Those who are unable to vote, the next best thing you can do is donate. Donate. You can visit our website at shontelbrown.com and you will see a Contribute Now button in red. And the next best thing to do after that is if you don't have treasures, then we welcome your time. You can volunteer. We welcome folks to canvass with us. We welcome folks to text bank with us, phone bank with us. You can do these virtually. So if you want to get some steps in, we've got 10 days to canvass in your community, and we welcome you to do that. Or if you'd like to stay in the comfort of your own home, you can join us for a virtual phone bank by visiting, again, shontelbrown.com. Hit the Join Us button, and you'll see a list of activities where you can join me and my team to help send me back to Congress. So thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate you and your audience, and God bless you, and thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.
God bless
and thank you as well. God bless you as well, Congresswoman Brown, and thank you once again for coming on. You were one of the first who came on the show last year, so we thank you once again for coming on today.
Always a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye-bye. Thank you and good day. So that was Congresswoman Shontel Brown from the 11th District in the state of Ohio. So those of you that are listening that heard Congresswoman Brown, and also in the first hour heard Kara Turrentine from the Nina Turner campaign, you can weigh what both of them had to say. Understand we couldn't go into a lot of detail due to their time constraints. Hopefully, the questions that we were able to ask were questions that you were interested in, and that their answers to those questions, if you have not voted already, will help you make your decision in this very important primary election that takes place on May the 3rd here in the state of Ohio. For those of you that are listening to us outside of the 11th District of the state of Ohio, or that are listening to us outside of the state of Ohio, period, even though these two persons from these two different campaigns that we had on really doesn't affect you directly. They do affect you indirectly, because whomever wins this primary in all likelihood is going to be the nominee in November, is going to win the general election, I should say, in November. And so while they may not represent your district, decisions that they make along with others within the Congress are still going to affect you. So I hope that you were enlightened as well, so you can at least know who these individuals are when one of them will be representing this district in the Congress of the United States after the November election. And so we're near the end of our program, and as we do on each Saturday, we close our program by giving our hero and our zero of the week. And this is no different. This program is no different than any before. So we want to do that right now. Our hero of the week, actually, it's a group of persons. Mm-hmm. There is a semi-professional football team in Cleveland. No, not the Cleveland Browns. They've been semi-pro some years, 0-16 and 1-15. But I digress. There is actually a semi-professional team with a football team within the city of Cleveland called the Cleveland Rams. Mm-hmm. And on this past Wednesday, they were coming from practice at the John F. Kennedy Field. And they were in the Lee Miles area on 173rd Street, and they noticed a house that was on fire. And there was a man trapped in that house, and he was calling for help because he could not get through the door. And so several members of the Cleveland Rams semi-professional football team didn't even give it a second thought. They risked their lives in order to save this man's life, pull the man from out of the house in the fire. Not only did they do that, but they were willing to go back in to make sure that there was no one else in there, which there wasn't. Got him out of the house and got him to safety, so that when the fire department and the EMS arrived, they were able to administer to this man so that he would not have died from smoke inhalation. So these members of the Cleveland Rams football team, semi-professional football team, for your heroic actions on Wednesday in the Lee Miles area of Cleveland, which, by the way, is part of the 11th district. So it is on topic of what we were talking about today with our representatives from the two campaigns. You are our heroes of the week for what you did, willing to risk your lives to rescue this man from his burning household. And our zero of the week is a multi-winner. This is not his first time winning this very prestigious award, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time that he wins, because based on his actions, he is viable to be a candidate almost on a weekly basis. And our zero of the week is Governor Ron DeSantis, or as I call him, Governor Ron Death Sentence, mm-hmm. of the state of Florida. And why did old Ronnie win the goat's horns this week? Well, for those of you that don't know, Governor DeSantis is the proponent of a law in the state of Florida, which is basically called the Don't Say Gay bill, which does not allow teaching on sexual orientation in classrooms from kindergarten to third grade. Personally, I don't really have a problem with that, but the problem is how it's worded. But because Disney employees implored their CEO, first the CEO of Disney did not even speak out on it, just left it alone. But employees of Disney urged him to speak, so he did. And he basically came out and said that he opposed the bill. So because he said that he opposed the bill, you know what Governor Death Sentence did? Governor Death Sentence signed into law yesterday a law that will now take away Disney World's tax exemption from them and they're self-governing. Walt Disney World sits on about 28,000 acres of territory in Florida, in two counties, in Osceola and Orange County in Florida. And they have been a self-governing tax-exempt entity since the 1967.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really a boon to the state of Florida because they have done the job so well. To give you an example of how well they do it, there was a blackout in that area about a year or so ago where that whole area lost power, but Disney didn't. They have their own police and fire department there. And so they've done a great job of doing it. But now Governor DeSantis has now signed this into law, rather, the bill that will basically strip them of their tax exemption and also of their autonomy. Now, this is not going to go into effect until July of 2023, so in all likelihood, it's going to be rescinded. And the reason that he did it, remind you folks, this is the same governor who, quote, said this is the free state of Florida, unquote. The reason that he did it is that the CEO of Disney disagreed, which last time I checked, we do have something called the First Amendment in this country, disagreed with this don't say a gay law. And so Governor DeSantis did this as a way to punish them for their dissent, simply for saying they disagree. In other words, exercising their First Amendment rights. And yet he says this is the free state of Florida. So, Governor DeSantis, for this action, once again, and I've stopped counting how many times you worn the gold horns on this show, but once again, you are our zero of the week. Wear it well, because you're so good at it. You've been listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Once again, we want to thank our call-in interview guests in the first hour, Kara Turn team, the campaign manager of the Nina Brown for Congress campaign, and in the second hour, Congresswoman Shontel Brown, both running for Congress in the 11th District of Ohio. Right now, though, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time, and until next Saturday at 3 p.m., shalom.
We'd like to thank you for listening to The Right Side with your host, Jeff Doggett, here on the station where we don't bring this no static, but we sure enough bring the noise, nostaticradio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/NoStaticRadio LLC, on Twitter at @NoStatic_radio, on Instagram at @TheReal_NoStaticRadio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler.com or Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio in the toolbar for replays of this show and others. And for continuous streaming, that means no rebuffering or refreshing the page. Just sit back, relax, and wait for your next show to pop up. Check us out on TuneIn.com, LiveOnLineRadio.net, or MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on this platform. And for all things No Static Radio, including upcoming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts, please check out our website, which is being reconstructed and recreated. So please have some patience with us. We appreciate you at www.nostaticradio.net. And you know what it is? We got more music for your listening pleasure. Hearing your voice of the revolution on staticradio.net. Powered by Google. Sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, the Cleveland Rugby League, and Design Me exclusively. Thank you for listening on this sensational Saturday. And be safe, be well, enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next time.